Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of Bold Predictions here on the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. He's Steve Marik, he's Greg Smith, and I'm Zack Carpenter. And today we're previewing Illinois hosting Nebraska, both 2 and 3 teams. Not even sort of, it's a swing game for both of these teams. I mean, the winner has a chance to have this be the reset point, turning point, and get to 500 and stay in the thick of the Big Ten West race, believe it or not. And the loser will have its odds of reaching a bowl game significantly impacted as we go forward the last 6 games of the season or so. So, Steve, any initial thoughts from for Friday?
Yeah, obviously the Michigan game was terrible. It was ridiculous, as Matt Rhule and Tony White said. But the good news for Husker fans, these next 7 games and the upcoming schedule, they're all winnable. I've tried to do my research, my due diligence on Illinois. Not a good football team. They're not anything like they were last year. They have taken a step back, and that's good news for Nebraska. Friday night games, they can get weird under the lights, especially in Champaign with these 2 programs. But I think this is a really winnable game for the Huskers. So it's going to be really interesting to go there and see the vibe around the place. It's going to be sleepy. These are 2 teams that don't really attract a lot of juice nationally. I know Nebraska is relevant because people watch Nebraska on TV, and the good thing is, I guess, playing on a Friday night, there's only one other game that night on TV. So a lot of eyes are going to be on this
Nothing
one.
like a Nebraska-Illinois spotlight game to get everyone's juices rolling for week 6.
People are going to be forced to watch this one. So it's, I don't know. I'm really excited about it just for what this could mean for Nebraska's season going forward. And the goal of reaching the postseason and getting that magical 6-win mark. This is huge. If Nebraska can do it, that bodes well for reaching that goal. If they can't, that's not a great start for the real start of the season, in my opinion, which is right now on Friday night.
Yeah, I pick off right where you left off, Steve, because it's exactly why I'm excited for this game. Is that this to me signals the real start of Nebraska's season. I felt like that Michigan game was kind of a break where, listen, it was never going to be a good game for Nebraska, right? It's just not a good matchup. And I think, I forget if it may have been Jeff Ekstrom, it may have been you, Steve, someone on the staff mentioned to me that if you looked out there on the field last Saturday, Michigan was better at every single position on the field. And that's not a debate. That's not being funny. That is like legit. Like they were better at every single position. And so you just don't expect a team to be able to win that game for sure. Now, do you want to see more fire out of them? Sure. Like I think that's fair. And I do think that is reflective in how the tone that we've heard all week from the players and the coaches, especially the coaches that we've heard from, namely Matt Rhule and Tony White this week. And I really like that. But I'm very fired up for this game for the simple fact that it is a huge deal for this program moving forward. You have to win this game to boost your bowl chances but also if you lose this, it kind of signals that you really could lose to any of the teams remaining on the schedule, right? And I would add that to build some momentum in this program right now would be such a big thing, because I don't know that you're ever, and I don't know if this is hyperbole, that you will ever see an easier finish to the schedule for Nebraska football. Like, I don't know if it'll be possible. And so it's just, it all adds up to a random sleepy Friday night game in which their stadium has already been on fire this week in Champaign, to now, like, that's a monumental game for Nebraska's football program. It sounds weird, but I think it's very valid.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this now. This is probably like the 3rd or 4th time saying this or writing it in private or rapid recap video that we did on Monday, what have you. When I did my game by game predictions, and I did it 3 times in April, July, and then August, sort of resetting each time. And with each prediction, I ranked from 1 to 12, my most confident pick to least confident prediction, whether it was a winner or loss for Nebraska. And Illinois, I sort of all 3 times I did it, I chalked it up as almost an automatic loss for Nebraska because of the way Illinois looked last year. They beat Nebraska 3 times in a row now. It's a road game on a Friday night. In the wise words of Steve Marik, it's weird. It's going to get weird. Let's get weird. So those things sort of all add up, and I sort of like tossed it away, like, all right, well, that's a loss. I think a lot of people on this beat had predicted an Illinois win coming into the season, but the trajectory of this game, the picture of this game has changed, and it's a lot more winnable for Nebraska than at least I had anticipated coming into the season. And it's reflective in the game line. I mean, Illinois is a 3.5 point favorite at home, with 42.5 or 43.5 with the over under, but so they're expecting an Illinois win, but with a line that close, it's not like you're an overwhelming favorite. And with this game, like you guys said, this is, in my opinion, the biggest swing game right now on Nebraska's schedule, given the way the opening of the season, the way the first 5 games have gone, with losing that heartbreaker against Minnesota and losing to Colorado the following week, when that game was there for the taking, and now you got 7 games left. And if you're ranking them on most winnable to least winnable, I think this one's right there in the middle, because you have Northwestern, Purdue at Michigan State, hosting Northwestern, hosting Purdue, traveling to Michigan State. And then those, in my opinion, I would rank those 3 in that order as the most winnable, and least winnable would start with Wisconsin, then go up to Maryland when you host them, and then Iowa to close the season. I think this Illinois game, in my opinion, is right there in the middle, like 4th out of the 7. So it's one of those could go either way games, but that's why they call it a swing game, is because this could propel either team, or sort of send them more toward bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten West. But it's not as if loser of this game, the season is over by any means, especially Nebraska, because of the way that schedule lines up. But the hopes of ending a 7-year bowl drought would improve substantially if they're able to pull this one out on the road. So with that, open it up for bowl predictions. Steve, gonna rattle off a couple numbers to know here about Illinois before you get going. Total offense is about 391 yards per game. They're 7th in the Big Ten, 69th in the FBS. Scoring offense, 21.6, which is 103rd and second to last in the Big Ten. Total defense and scoring defense, 419 yards allowed per game, 30.6 points allowed per game, which are both last in the Big Ten and bottom 3rd in the country. And turnover margin is minus 1.2, which is 3rd to last in the Big Ten, 122nd in the FBS. So not a lot of positive numbers for Illinois. I'm sure for the most part, if I rattled off the same type of numbers for Nebraska, than the defense, I think those would all be wouldn't be looking great for the offense for Nebraska either. But another team that doesn't turn it over and does give it away. As a little teaser for my bold prediction. Steve, you're first up. What do we got?
Yeah, so my first my bold prediction is Nebraska. I'm trying to go bolder, guys. I'm trying to go bolder. Okay. So my first my prediction is Nebraska will have 2 100-yard rushers. When I watch these games that Illinois has on the schedule, that defense is just not what it was last year, and the offensive line wasn't what it was last year. So sticking with the defense, I think Nebraska is going to give Illinois' defense some trouble. Illinois has had trouble with the read runs with the quarterback and the running back through 5 games. Go watch that Toledo season opener. It was really awful for the Illini defense. They just didn't really seem well coached, and it's a new D coordinator. It's a new staff on defense, because they all kind of migrated to Purdue. So I don't know. Illinois, you mentioned it, Zach. They're giving up 30 points per game last in the Big Ten. Their rush defense was surprisingly bad, because Jerzon Newton, Keith Randall, the 2 all Big Ten, all American caliber guys in the middle. I've been really disappointed with their play so far. They're getting shoved around there. They don't look like they're playing hard. I wonder what's going on over there. But I just think that Nebraska has shown success in the zone read, just the read run type plays that Heinrich Harburg brings to the table. I think that can have success in Champaign on Friday. Illinois is giving up 4.61 yards per carry on their rush defense, and that's second to last in the Big Ten. Kansas rushed for over 200 yards. Purdue almost rushed for 200 yards. Toledo almost got over 200 yards on the ground. The linebackers aren't very good. The DBs aren't very good at Illinois. I think Nebraska is going to have a big game on the ground. So I think 2 100-yard rushers for the Huskers.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, that to see how leaky Illinois' defense has been shouldn't be it's weird because it's not a huge surprise because they lost a very talented defensive coordinator in Ryan Walters to Purdue, and a lot of that staff, as he noted, kind of moved along with him, which is no surprise on why I think their defense now looks better at Purdue. Not a surprise at all there, but I'm with you on kind of those guys on the interior on that defensive line that you thought would continue to take step forwards regardless of the coach, but that may be just with the doctor order for Nebraska needs to get their rushing attack going once again. And I think it's if you look at Nebraska and how they've evolved on offense as kind of this power spread, they should be pretty happy to be going against a team that has had troubles with that. We'll see it once again if Harburg pitches the ball and kind of go from there. But my bold prediction has nothing to do with any of that. It actually has to do with the freshman place kicker I just realized just now that my bold prediction actually gives away my winner for later. But Tristan Alvano is 1 for 5, I believe, or 1 for 4, sorry, in kicks this season. He's been struggling, right? There's been some calls, and I think there was a question this week about this and about whether or not that competition had opened back up. And it was questions both. It was either Matt Rhule or Satterfield. I know Ed Foley was asked about it on the radio last night as well, and his answer was more along the lines of, "Hey, Tristan is our kicker. Timmy is a great teammate and has been helping him out to try and get better." And the one thing that I would note on those Alvano kicks is that it's not a leg strength issue whatsoever. Like, those kicks would have been good, all of them, from deeper. But it's just that, the accuracy has been a thing. But I think my bold prediction is Tristan Alvano nails the game-winning field goal to send Nebraska to this bye week, and he'll be the hero and get things rolling after this game. I think that he breaks through after this one. I actually think I'm not going to say the score right this second, but I think he's going to have some practice at some field goals during this game. So yeah, Tristan Alvano gets his career rolling in a big way on the road in a Big Ten game that they've got to have.
So we got a 3-point shooting contest coming out for Nebraska and Tristan Alvano. That actually, Steve got the award for closest to almost getting a pregame prediction right. When we were on the field at Minnesota, pretty much the last thing he said, we did a little 3-4 minute video from the stadium, and he said, he pretty much said, I think this game is going to be the type of game where Tristan Alvano is going to be called on, and who knows, maybe he has a chance coming down at the last minute to kick a game-winning field goal in his first ever college game. And the stars were aligning. And Nebraska was driving against Minnesota, and then Jeff Sims forces a post pass into Marcus Washington, gets picked off, and we know the rest. So if we were handing out awards for almost there, he gets the horseshoe award. We got
a couple of them. Steve has this year.
We've all been pretty close, once or twice, but Steve's the one that's been consistently the closest.
Jeff did not need to stare down Marcus Washington as hard as he did on that play. It's like, come on, I want my Alvano prediction. But anyway, yeah, moving on.
Steve's actually 5-0 this year with picks. He picked Minnesota. He's the only one on the staff who's undefeated right now. He had Minnesota, Colorado, Nebraska, and their 2 wins in Michigan. So no pressure. This is probably the toughest one, maybe the toughest one, because it might be the most up in the air this year. But as I transition really awkwardly into my own bold prediction, first up, some cleanup. I said turnover margin was minus 1.2. That's obviously the average for Illinois. They are actually tied with Nebraska for -6 for their turnover margin. So 2 teams who give it away. There are 2 very generous teams. They give it away and they don't take from you. So they're both tied for, I think it was 122nd. Yeah, 122nd in the country for turnover margins out of 132 teams, 130 teams listed. in the stats I'm looking at. But I have some trivia time for you boys. Put your thinking cap on, whether it's backwards, sideways, or frontwards, maybe even upside down. There are 2 teams in the Big Ten who have lost more turnovers than Nebraska. Nebraska's lost 10. Can you name the other 2?
Indiana.
There's
Indiana's
2.
a good guess. Indiana and it's not.
Northwestern.
Northwestern was going to be the team that I said, but I don't know if
Northwestern's
I feel like
going to be. Man, they're going to like play well the rest of the season, I think.
The answers are Michigan State.
Damn it. That's what I was going to change
after
that.
turnovers lost. Michigan State. I'm not going to lie. I probably would have guessed Northwestern or Indiana too. Just go.
Yeah.
If it's a Big Ten stat, like.
I mean, they fired
Northwestern's
their
actually playing pretty. Northwestern's playing pretty.
Bell.
Northwestern's playing pretty well, all things considered. Yeah. So
I think they're going to be. I think they're going to be tough. Yeah. I don't know.
That's the game that's become tougher than expected. Michigan State to me is the game that's easier.
Well, they got the us against the world type thing going on inside that locker room. They know everybody's
that matters a lot. I mean, it's a
they're playing
cliche,
pissed off. I bet they play pissed off the rest of the season. That's good for them.
And speaking of pissed off, that's what I think the Nebraska defense. That's the demeanor they've had all week. They just seem like no nonsense. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, they had their fully padded, full contact practice on Sunday, which Steve, as you noted in your story yesterday after a press conference, Ben Scott said he's never in his career had a full practice the day after the game, which Phelan Sanford also talked about, where I thought he gave the best quote at the press conference, where he's like, I saw a lot of guys who were completely fine with it because we had a lot of things to get off our chest, essentially. I can't remember the exact quote. It was, I just wrote it yesterday.
Then he also said, we're going to learn who's one of us, and that's one of us. OOU is a Rhule mantra. Baby. So that was another. I mean, Phelan Sanford was pretty good up there. Yeah, he said a lot of interesting.
Sound like a future coach.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, he was a captain for the Michigan game, actually, and he's become one of my favorite. Him and John Bullock are my 2 favorite players to cover at a press conference. Just for, I mean, some people call it boring. I like their demeanor, where they never change. They never rise above right here. They never get excited or sad, I guess. They never like show a negative or positive emotion. It's always even keeled and like an aura of, I don't give a shit about any of all this. Like, just let me go play football. When can we play again? That's sort of the demeanor. And Phelan Sanford is getting his first career start at safety on Friday against Illinois. He played a career high 27 snaps last week after Deshaun Singleton went down. He had it was a season high and career high last year at Purdue against that pass happy offense with 62. But he's going to be a starter. He has the fewest snaps this year among defensive starters for Friday night with 66. And a lot of big things are called on from him. But yeah, he said that the practice, I found the quote, I've seen a lot of guys who are completely fine with it. We all understood, and we had some things that we wanted to get out of our system anyway. So I thought his attitude, his demeanor was sort of encapsulated the entire, like, all the defensive players who have gone up there. And Tony White, who called the Michigan defensive performance, his defense's performance against Michigan ridiculous. After giving up 45 points and 436 total yards. I mean, Michigan worked them up and down the field. And that's why this is, relatively speaking, a get-right game for the defense. Illinois is not a opponent it's not an FCS school or a bad program by any means. But it, relatively speaking, comparatively speaking to what you just faced in Michigan, the defense has an opportunity to get itself corrected this week, and I think it will. I mean, we've talked about it over and over, or at least I have, the fact of the one thing missing in this defense is the lack of takeaways, the lack of forced turnovers, and like I said, Illinois has 11 turnovers. They're 119th in the country, second to last in the Big Ten. Luke Altmaier heat. he honestly might be the best quarterback in the Big Ten West. Eighth in Minnesota quarterback, eighth in K. Steve, give it to me. Pronunciation.
Kaliakmanis.
Yes, that guy. He's in the running. Tanner Mordecai, but I know the Big Ten West isn't exactly loaded with the nation's most elite quarterbacks, but Luke Altmaier has a case to be the best quarterback in that division, but still he's thrown 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions this year. He threw 4 against Penn State. Steve, you were talking about how he forced some things. He lost a fumble that Purdue recovered for a touchdown. So he's prone to those turnovers as he's sort of transitioning into a new offensive system, transferring over from Ole Miss. So we've talked about before how those turnovers, Nebraska had 1 each in the first 4 games, and then none against Michigan. I think they come in bunches when they do come, and I think those turnovers are coming Friday night. I have Nebraska forcing 3 turnovers, and if we're going more oddly specific, 2 interceptions, 1 sack fumble, because Altmaier's been sacked 18 times. That offensive line is vulnerable, and Nebraska had 14 sacks. They were tied 4th in the country. Going into Louisiana Tech, haven't had a sack in the last 2 games. So this is a prime opportunity to make some noise in the backfield and rack up a few more of those, and also get those takeaways. Help that offense out. Help out a struggling offense with better field position, or maybe even a score, which, boom, we're doing it. Pick 6 for Phelan Sanford. Talked about him so much, figure might as well go with that. He's going to have a pick 6 to help the offense out, and 3 overall takeaways for the defense. Steve, please take these people's suffering away from me rambling, and I want you to ramble now. Final score prediction. Bring it around.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Final score.
That's what I do, rambling man.
Yeah. For my final score, I'm going against my own rule of no pun intended. I'm going against my own rule of picking Nebraska to win when they haven't shown that they can do it recently. And Illinois has won the last 3 games. So why in the world would I pick Nebraska to win this in a weird Friday night game on the road against a program they haven't beat in 3 years? Why would I do
Vibes,
it,
baby?
I have no idea why I'm doing it, but I'm just going to go with my gut. I think Nebraska is going to win this thing 28-24. It's going to be close. It's going to be down to the 4th quarter. I'm putting my faith and trust in Matt Rhule for no reason at all. I just like the vibes. I liked how he talked, and I know Matt Rhule is a good talker in the media. When the cameras go on, he's really, really good with his words. I guess he won me over on Monday. I just think that he's going to make a difference. I get the feeling that he's going to make a difference with this team, doing that Sunday practice, drilling it in his players' heads that he wants them to play fast and physical and not worrying about making a mistake and being hesitant and not doing your job. Just go out, play 100 miles per hour. And if you make a mistake, do it going 100 miles per hour, and then he can live with that. So I have it in my gut. I think Nebraska's going to get out of there with a 4-point win, 28-24.
Man, it's interesting, Steve. How nice is it, though, now for everyone involved with this thing, that when a head coach talks, you actually feel better about the program? Yeah. Like it's a foreign thing, but it actually feels good. And I totally agree with you. This whole thing for me started then. It started when Matt Rhule. Now, honestly, it started on Saturday. I'll say it. Go back to Saturday. The evolution of his press conference, Matt Rhule's, like from the kind of, I don't want to say too much, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus or make people mad, to by the end of that press conference on Saturday after the game, I thought he was spitting some fire. And then he definitely came to that Monday press conference wanting to get some stuff off of his chest. Like, I thought the players needing to get some stuff off their chest in that practice. Matt Rhule definitely came there with the intention that he was going to send a message. And I think Tony White followed that up the next day with a very similar kind of deal at the mic, where he also wanted to send a message. Like, I don't know that we've seen some different variations of Tony White at these press conferences now. We've noted that a couple of times, right? But I don't know that we've ever seen him that upset at one of these press conferences. And the thing that I really like about both of them that I think is really good for the program as a whole is that they both took accountability for their portion of it, right? So Matt Rhule talked about, hey, maybe I need to do a better job of getting the guys prepared to play hard. Or, Tony White says, I have to do a better job of getting guys ready to play with their hair on fire. Like, I like that accountability from the top down so that it doesn't seem like, oh, they're just going out there mad and throwing players under the bus. We've seen that before too. It doesn't work out well in that regard either. So I think that the tone for me was set by the coaching staff, starting with Matt Rhule on Saturday, that I think they're going to have a bounce back. Now, all that being said, and now I feel bad in a way, or I'm questioning my actual score prediction, because I said that Tristan Alvano was going to kick a game-winning field goal. My score coming into this thing was 16-13 Nebraska. I'm going to stick with that for the fact that I went ahead and said it, and that's what I had written down. But I could see Nebraska scoring more than that. But the problem is I go back to what Steve was saying about picking them to do things that you haven't seen. Yeah. I want to pick them to score, high 20s, low 30s, because Illinois' defense is vulnerable. But at the same time, like, I feel kind of ridiculous picking them to do that. Like, and there's no shade to y'all. Like, it just is I feel weird doing it because we haven't seen it, though it wouldn't shock me. 16-13 Nebraska. Tristan Alvano is the new hero and gets to go into the bye week feeling good.
Do they carry him off their shoulders at the end?
I hope
he's a
so,
big guy,
because that would make people mad. So I hope so. Maybe he goes full Iowa kicker and takes a bow or blow a kiss.
Blows a kiss to Bert. Oh yeah, man,
maybe he shushes the crowd, Thomas Fedoni style. But this one would be on the road, so. And
it'd work.
I don't expect a raucous road atmosphere in Champaign on Friday night, so maybe the crowd will be hushed enough.
As
bring
your own juice.
BYOJ, and like Steve said, could be a sleepy Friday night game. But if we're talking about predicting things that Nebraska hasn't done, you're talking about the guys who picked them to beat Colorado. So, me and Greg both did, and we. That's up there for worst take of the year retroactively.
It really is. Like we should own that.
But the thing is, I stand by the analysis we had going into the game was sound, because it was if they set their tempo and pace, then they have a chance, and they did exactly that.
Yeah, they did for a while.
They just couldn't take care of the ball, and
nobody could predict that Jeff Sims couldn't catch a snap.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for helping us. Yeah.
So you guys are okay in my book.
Well, thanks, Steve. Because of that, I'm also
no problem, guys.
Because of your support,
I feel better.
I'm gonna predict Nebraska 17, Illinois 13. I just think it's. I agree with a lot of what you guys say. I just think it's gonna be that classic, beautifully gross Big Ten West style football game.
Let's get it.
Illinois' defense, as we've gone over, is not very good. Nebraska's offense is not very good. Which one's going to play out? Will Nebraska's defense have a bounce back game against a similarly struggling Illinois offense? I just think it's safest to win a Big Ten West between two struggling teams. I think it's safest to go with a low scoring sort of slugfest. But a couple notes, and that set you up for any final thoughts. Is just the difference in this game compared to last year's is pretty startling, with all the Illinois defensive numbers we ran through, and Nebraska's defensive numbers last year coming into the game. Illinois had the number one scoring defense in the country. It was allowing 8.9 points per game, and 220 total yards for number two and in total defense. And Nebraska's defense was the opposite. I just had the numbers in front of me, but I don't think Nebraska fans even want or care to hear about how bad last year's defense was, because it's a dawn of a new age in Nebraska. And speaking of those numbers and dawn of a new age, Illinois is still bringing along a new defensive coordinator in Aaron Henry after Ryan Walters left for Purdue. And for your final thoughts, I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. I haven't asked you this before, but something that like just randomly hit. I'll have random thoughts and takes come across my head an hour before recording. I'm like, I'm going to workshop this. I'm going to take shop this, see what the guys say. With Tony White, he seems destined to become a head coach one day, and whether that's one day soon or down the road. And it seems like the buy-in and the belief in Tony White's very similar to what Illinois had in Ryan Walters last year, and then he went off to Purdue, and everyone, I think most people said Ryan Walters is a future head coach. I do feel like we're getting the similar vibes and future lining up for Tony White.
I do. I think I when I look at Tony White, when I listen to him, when I see the impact that he's had so early in his tenure here, I definitely see a future head coach with him. I don't know if it's going to be after this season, but absolutely within, I don't know, 5 years or 5 years, something like that. I don't know. He's just, I think he's the whole package. I think he's the whole deal. He cares about his guys, and that goes a long way. He gets kids to play hard for him. He just shows up in the offseason, teaches them a brand new scheme that they've never done before, and they go out and they have a great game against Minnesota. They have a great 3.5 quarters against Colorado. They have, which are two drastically different offensive styles. They shut down Northern Illinois. I know it's a group of 5 opponent, but they do okay against Louisiana Tech with that. I know they didn't look great after the lightning delay, but it was a lightning delay. I didn't even want to be at the stadium after that. Who cares about that?
No one wanted to be there.
Exactly. We know, so, Steve, you said that your will to live had been like,
God, I just did not.
That was brutal, man.
Lightning delays. Oh my God, are awful.
I actually I had a curveball for the lightning delay. I was actually happy because I had no idea.
I did get work done.
I wanted to write, and I'm
like,
on that delay.
Get done.
I'm like, you know what? I know it, and I went back and like rewatched like half the offensive plays for Nebraska. Wrote out my story. I'm like, all right, well, we got it done. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. Long story short, yes, Tony White, future head coach. I'm absolutely agreeing with that.
Yeah, 100%. I think 3 years is what I think. I do not. I would be surprised if it was like a one and done type of situation. Even if they return to form of that kind of top 10-ish type of defense. Like, I just think that there's a thing here that if you could build the defense here and you could do some more winning, that it is a bigger deal, obviously, to do that here than it is to do at Illinois. So the incentive to stay is better. I don't know what Ryan Walters was being paid at Illinois last year, but I'm going to assume that it was not, over $1 million like Tony White is being paid right now, so they could continue to bump him, like all of that sort of thing. I think that he'll be here for a little bit, but I do think that he's got future head coach written all over him. And there's a couple of things. He's obviously a great teacher, but he's, and maybe even more importantly, he's a really good communicator. Like, the message with him to us even is always so consistent. And so I always find it that always makes me think that when he talks to his players, that has to be part of the deal with why they've done such a good job of picking up what he's trying to teach them to then go do on the grass, to steal his phrase. And so, I absolutely think that he's a future head coach. And I think that people at Syracuse thought that when he left to take the DC job at Nebraska. So yeah, absolutely.
It tells you a lot what Syracuse did after Tony White left. They hired Rocky Long, the guy who taught Tony White. So it's like they're like, okay, we want to keep doing what Tony White did. Let's hire his mentor. So and Syracuse is doing pretty well.
Yeah, they're still doing well. Yeah.
That's actually not what I was going to say. I was going to say the fan base's reaction when Nebraska hired Tony White. It's like, come on, like anybody but him.
Until people got to see him talk, and then they were like, oh, okay, this dude might know some stuff. And then you're like, still, but I got some questions about this, being able to stop the run, whatever. And then they've been doing what they were doing. So yeah, I think those questions have kind of been answered. Now it's whether or not they can overcome the injuries and can continue to get backups ready. I think that's a building storyline for the rest of the season, which is why the bye week comes at just the perfect time for them.
It allows you to hold a full go padded practice on Sunday when the bye week is after your next game. Absolutely. I think that kind of played a little bit part of that too, just to send a message to the guys like, hey, ball out for one more week, then we can talk about the rest after on a bye week. I think that was part of it. Get
in those cool recovery tubs.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Rhule had a Rhule-gasm when Steve asked at a press conference a couple weeks ago, like, what makes Tony White such a good teacher? And he's just like, oh God, yeah, I love Tony White. And we talk about a team sort of adopting the head coach's personality. I think this defense has adopted Tony White's mentality, that demeanor. And like I said earlier, they look like a pissed off unit going into Illinois. But The Tony White. Before I say this, it does feel like it's going to be a 3-year thing with him. I mean, get the man paid. He's one of him and Satterfield are the first $2 million coordinators in Nebraska history. But who cares? Keep paying him if he's getting the job done. I get the sense that it's going to be a 3-year project. That's what Tony White like minimum is going to want to do. It's what he did at Syracuse. But I know people probably get sick of me bringing up the Ohio State days, but my first year on the beat there, it is somewhat reminiscent of 2018 Ohio State. The year before I got there, their defense was awful. And then Jeff Hafley comes in as a co-defensive coordinator along with Greg Madison, who they hired from Michigan. And they completely turned that defense around. I mean, having Chase Young and Jeff Okuda, Jordan Fuller, Damon Arnett, like having
first-round picks. But
having 3 first-round draft picks on defense and then like 4 or 5 other second, third rounders obviously helps. But they flipped that defense around, and Hafley, it was supposed to be a 2-year deal. Like that was what Urban Meyer and Ryan Day asked of their coordinators: give me a minimum of 2 years before moving on to another opportunity. But after 1 year turning that defense around, he left for the Boston College head coaching job. And I always think, I mean, Boston College like came out of the gate pretty strong, all things considered, in Hafley's first couple of years there. And now things are turning south. And I always wondered, like, if he had just done 1 more year there, not just what Ohio State's defense would have looked like, but what sort of jobs could he have potentially earned if he had done 2 or 3 years at Ohio State rather than just 1. So I'm sure those are all factors being considered in Tony White's long-term future. But I honestly don't think he's thinking about any of that right now. I really do think he's one step at a time. Nothing matters but what's right in front of me right now. I mean, I say it in this industry all the time. Like, if you want to eventually get here and cover the New England Patriots, but you're a high school volleyball writer, you have to dominate that beat. You have to dominate the high school volleyball beat before you get to that next step. You have to focus on what's right in front of you now, and then eventually you could potentially get there and climb that ladder. I think that's what we're going to be looking at with Tony White. But looking toward the long-term future, short-term future, I think his defense is going to play really well on Friday. So before we get out of here, any last thoughts? Rapid fire, 30 seconds or less.
Not for me. I'm good.
No, I'm good. I got everything off my chest.
That'll do. All right. Well, we record this on Wednesday. I'm about to head over to Matt Rhule's press conference for lightning round today. We'll see what he has in store. And you can check this out. You can check out our other bowl predictions at InsideNebraska.com. We have a different one in our written version compared to the video, and expand on them a little bit. So again, InsideNebraska.com. You can check that out. Encourage you guys to like this video, subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel and the Inside Nebraska podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so you can get those dropped directly into your feed. So for Steve Marik, who will be boots on the ground in Champaign on Friday, coming back Saturday. So we'll have coverage for you over there in Champaign at the other Memorial Stadium. So once again, for Steve Marik, Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we'll catch you guys again next time.